What have you guys seen from the defense? I know they were in front of you guys yesterday. You got a better look. I haven't really seen them at all. What have you guys seen from the defense? Any observations?
My goodness, D Ford looks amazing, and this
Okay.
defensive line was just mauling guys. The backup center, I forget his name, but God help him, he was tossed to the ground by nearly
Brendel.
anyone. Yeah,
Brendel.
right. No, not for the Niners, for the
Oh.
San Diego Chargers.
Oh.
San Diego Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers.
The
Their
Superchargers.
backup. So this defensive line was just mauling them, like just killing them. And the other thing that I noticed with the defense is the secondary is a little bit more of an issue, especially with Emmanuel Mosley not there. Jason Barrett had some good battles with Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen kind of got the best of him, but that's Keenan Allen, right? But aside from that, it's kind of what we were talking about with depth. Who can you trust at this point? BW Webb is not trustworthy at this point. I mean, I saw him lose a bunch of reps time, and yesterday they were just going to Dante Johnson, every single time that they could because he was the one who started opposite of Jason Barrett. But D Ford looks amazing, and the defensive line is super deep. So yeah, I mean, that this D4 thing is such a breath of fresh air and something that is so good for this defense, and basically nobody could have seen this coming.
For me, it all starts with that defensive line. Yesterday, that defensive line in 11-on-11 was as dominant as I've ever seen a defensive line during that portion of drills. Definitely, at least for this training camp. I had them down for double-digit sacks, and I had 4 different edge players who logged multiple sacks as well. And I think that edge depth is really key for them. Arden Key was fantastic. I think, honestly, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on this as well, Grant. I thought that Jordan Willis has been one of the best players on the field all throughout camp, which is incredible considering, he's kind of just a rotational situational pass rusher, but he's consistently winning his reps. He was winning against Trent Williams more than any other player when the Niners were practicing amongst themselves. So the amount of depth that they have on edge to me is really because we talked a lot about the interior and how deep, Maurice Hurst, Zach Kerr, Givens has looked really good, but then just the strength they have on that D-line has been phenomenal. The concern lies more with that depth on the secondary. The starters there isn't really a weak spot amongst the starters, but whoever's been there in place of Emmanuel Mosley, who's played very sparingly during camp, has just been getting torched over and over and over again. Yesterday and the day before it was, yesterday and today it was Dante Johnson. For a while it was Tim Harris to start camp.
Ken Webster.
Again, it's a situation. Yeah, it's a situation where when you're going up in a division that has so many good, every team in that division has multiple good receivers. So even if you have a red shadow of the other team's number one, they're going to be able to exploit that weakness. And we saw last year, Mosley was kind of the guy getting picked on when Arizona was going at him 15, 16 targets a game. And my biggest concern would be is if he can't play, it's only going to be worse than what we saw last season in that regard. But other than that, the defense does look really strong. And again, the biggest thing that I would be worried about is that they're going to end up having to cut at least one, I think 2 players who are immediately going to get scooped up and be not only picked up by another NFL team, but have prominent roles on another team from their defensive line because it's so deep. And I think they seriously need to evaluate eliminating that third quarterback on the roster that Kyle said he wants to keep. And because I think the value of having an extra pass rusher, whether it's somebody on the interior or another edge player, is far more valuable than keeping Nate Sudfeld on the roster. And again, I think Nate Sudfeld has had a great camp. I thought that, he's played about as well as you could expect a player of his caliber who's in a depth role to play. But they're going to end up losing somebody who could be a significant contributor on that defensive line simply because they have so many players who are good and deserve an NFL roster spot, and you can only keep so many of them.
Okay, I didn't see much of the defense, but today I was peeking across when the Niners weren't doing stuff on offense, and every time I did, Talanoa Hufanga gave up a touchdown pass in the red zone. It was at least 2 or 3 times, and so he may not be ready to start right away. He may not be a starting caliber safety. I don't know. If he's a good backup who's good on special teams, he's a good draft pick. I'm just interested in that strong safety spot because Tavon Wilson's had a good camp, but he's also kind of a known commodity. He's never been a high-level starter. I'm curious to see if he gets isolated during the season, and if he does, I don't necessarily think that Talanoa will be the one to replace him. It might be Clinton Dix, although I didn't see anything from him in these 2 days. I wasn't watching. All I know is Hufanga got worked a little bit today, so maybe recalibrate your expectations at strong safety. But if Jaquiski Tartt could ever come back, that would be so clutch. I don't know if we should expect it. Thoughts real quick? It sounds so serious, and the team just doesn't talk about it.
I mean, I think that they kind of came into camp with a plan with him, and I don't think that the plan at all was for him to play at all. And I think that if
Okay.
it was much worse,
Okay.
I think that if it was much worse, that he'd probably be on IR. I understand he's on PUP, but they put Tony
Okay.
Jefferson on IR with the groin right away. That seems to be a lot more strong. So I think that there is a plan while they aren't saying anything, and I agree with that. I think that they have a plan that they're trying to just get him ready, get him up for week 1,
Good.
The best way that they can. So let's see. I mean, the guy knows the defense.
Good.
I wouldn't really worry about like being acclimated and getting reps or anything like that. But I think
Good
that
point.
I think that they're just taking it slow with him as they are with like Bosa.
I think he's important to this team in this season. I think he is. Nothing against Tavon Wilson. I just think Tart's important. I think he's better.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue with Tart is that he has turf toe, and turf toe is such a hard injury to gauge like a timetable for return. And he can feel great. Like we saw him running sprints at camp. I'm sure you saw him working out off that far field, and he looked great running north to south and running that straight line speed where he's just getting into a full sprint. But the second he has to make a football move and he has to move laterally or plant and cut really quick, he could end up tweaking it and be out for the entire season. So I think at this point, I wouldn't expect him to come back and play. I won't say for the entire season, but you almost have to plan for that. And I agree with you. I think Wilson has had a really good camp because I didn't expect Tart to be out this long. I thought Wilson would just be like a depth guy. But I thought that he's looked pretty strong. But just as you said, the majority of his career, he was a special teams guy, depth player. He wasn't really, starting caliber player. I do think having Jimmy Ward does hide a lot of that stuff. You can kind of put Wilson in
and
the
a
box
great pass rush.
Ward
I mean, he could. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. So I think that I think he deserves that spot. I definitely think he's getting it over Hufanga. I think Hufanga's had, great stretches during camp, but I definitely think Wilson's played better overall. And just trusting the veteran presence there, I think would be the wise move. The other thing I would add is that D'Amico Ryans is far more willing to run man coverage than Robert Saleh was when he was here. He's running it at an increasingly higher clip than Robert Saleh did. So I do think that does eliminate the ability for defenses to pick on Wilson as much, because I think a lot of what you'll see is Ward will be matched up a bit more in man-to-man should they deploy the safeties in that coverage. And then Wilson will be end up, eating up the zone or playing, that single high center field.
Good point.
So, but you're right. Tart means so much. I think Tart's the most underrated starter on either side of the ball.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been an unsung hero the last couple of years, but you see how big the drop-off is when he's off the field, compared to when he's on it.
Yep. All right, we got a few questions, and we're going to wrap this up. Daniel says, thoughts on kicking the tires on Quentin Dunbar? Could be a good depth move at a low price. What do you guys think?
I don't think it's going to happen because of character issues. I understand that he didn't get charged with anything like that, but they're not going to disrupt, with bringing him in, right? He was involved with that thing with, what's his name?
That one thing
Deontay
with,
Baker.
Deontay
Baker. Yeah. I mean, I know that there weren't any charges or anything like that, but like it just, this organization prioritizes high quality character guys, and I mean, not saying that he isn't. It's just that's a little bit of a cloud that's around him right now.
Yeah, you're going to bet against that one happening. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I just don't think it's a scheme fit, honestly. I think that Dunbar looked a lot better in that, cover 3 deep third when he was playing zone. I wouldn't really trust him to run man-to-man. And the amount that they've been running it in practice leads me to believe they're probably going to be running a lot of man during games as well. So I just think from a scheme fit standpoint, it isn't worth it. And as Jason added, there's so much extra baggage that, a lot of times, as you know, in the NFL, if you can play, teams will deal with the baggage. I just think that there's not enough talent or scheme fit there to justify it at this point.
Jody says, love what you're doing. Question, scale of 1 to 10 being the highest. How much do you think he is ready to make a tangible impact on the team now? Who?
Lance?
Let's just say it's Lance. I think he can make a huge freaking impact on this team, like a 10. I mean, can make a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
I mean, even when the offense is operating at its highest, I guess efficient, state, with Jimmy Garoppolo, that's still not even close to the ceiling that Trey Lance would offer in terms of how they would use him with the zone read and how much that impacts the run game for other guys. You saw most to break off a touchdown on the first rep of the game, first rep of the 11-on-11s because he's just that fast, and that's still what he has. So I think it would be a huge impact. Just, again, the ceiling is just much higher when Lance is under center.
I would say at least a 7. I think ultimately with Lance, the biggest thing is that even if he struggles, if he's throwing balls high, or he's, adjusting to windows closing quicker in the NFL. Some of the things we have seen him struggle with in camp, his big playability and the fact that he threatens defenses with his legs and he's forcing defenses to play 11-on-11 just opens up so many of the things that Kyle Shanahan can do. And I think when you have a quarterback who can run, the floor of your offense is immediately elevated due to so many of the creative things and the ways you can deploy that quarterback using their legs, that I just think that he immediately is going to make the offense more explosive. That on those weeks where the defense isn't going to be out there holding teams, 10, 17 points, or whatever, there's going to be weeks where they're going to need to get into shootouts. I think that Lance is going to give them a much better chance to do that than Jimmy would.
Don says, why don't they trade some of that D-line depth for O-line depth? They are going to cut these guys and get nothing. They could use they go like 11 deep on the D-line. They go 4 deep on the offensive line.
Who's available, I guess, for what price and what are you getting? If you send one of these lower end D line guys, who are you getting? I mean, you would be basically trading depth for depth. That doesn't necessarily make an impact or is an impact player. So that's a little bit harder. It's not. I don't think it's as simple as that.
Well, Area Niner says, should we be concerned about CB depth and O-line depth? I mean, yeah. And I think this is a creative way to handle it. What do you think, Splash Cousin?
Yeah, I think they definitely should be concerned about both. I think the issue is with on the O-line. They were so dependent on the rookies in Jalen Moore and Aaron Banks. Obviously, Banks is hurt, and Moore, I think Kyle said he's been playing him at tackle because they have so many bodies already on the interior that I think they're not doing him any justice playing him out of position. I think he'd be much better as a guard. And then at corner, it's the same thing. They're relying so much on Ambry Thomas and Commodore Lenore that it might help to bring in some veteran presence. Just a quick example, when they traded for Laken Tomlinson, I believe it was a third-round pick, or not third-round, sorry, it was a day 3 pick in 2017. And Tomlinson, while he's not, a star player by any means, he's been a consistent starter that's contributed to the offense for a few years. So if they can get that kind of deal somewhere where they can give up a 7th-round pick or 6th-round pick or maybe one of their depth players that they might end up cutting anyway, I don't think it would hurt to start asking around the league and see if they can maybe find a team that has a surplus of offensive line and get a guy that's maybe a veteran who's been around that has a skill set to operate in that zone blocking scheme that can come in, not be expected to take on a huge role, but also can provide that they're going to feel comfortable should Brunskill get hurt or should, if anything happens to Alex Mack, the line is toast. So they need to find somebody that can come in and play a versatile role at either guard position or center, in my opinion.
Okay, last question. If you had to make a prediction on how the Niners season is going to end right now, what do you say? I would say I think Lance is going to be starting pretty soon. I think they're going to go to the playoffs. I think they'll win in the wild card round, and I think they'll lose in the divisional round because ultimately they have too much dead money. And I'm going to count Jimmy Garoppolo as the backup as dead money. And I think next year they're going to go all in and they could win the Super Bowl next year. I'm thinking like a 2012 Seattle Seahawks vibe where they're very good and Lance wins a playoff game but loses a second. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I don't understand why anybody wouldn't count that as a successful season.
It would be a successful season.
Winning a playoff game with a rookie quarterback, like who wouldn't want that? Yeah, I kind of got it the same way. I mean, this defense is going to be too good. Kyle Shanahan is going to draw up what he can, and if Lance plays, which that'll start to get louder if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't do something significant in these next 2 preseason games. And let's say he even starts week 1. Let's say the 49ers win and squeak one out against Detroit, and the offense isn't exactly lighting it up. And we all know, in Kyle Shanahan's time, the first game is usually slow. Almost every time, Tampa in 2019, 2020 last year against Arizona. So I think that just gets louder. But yeah, I mean, Lance eventually will probably take over the job unless something drastic happens. And you know what, they can make the playoffs, and I think they win a game 2 as well. But yeah, that would be a successful season. It's obviously as a fan of the team, you want to win the Super Bowl, but I think that it's all in good time, especially when you deliver the context of the fact that Lance is. You just want to see improvement from Lance, and you want to show that he can run the show.
Yeah, I think they're going to finish around 11-6 would be my prediction right now. I think they'll host a playoff game, whether it's in the wild card or the divisional round, depending on how the rest of the NFC shakes out. But I do think that they will only get as far as that first playoff win. I just think that there are too many other good teams in the NFC. There's too many, when you're going up against the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady's of the world, as good as I think Lance could be, that's a lot to ask of a rookie. And I think the roster around them is very good. I don't think that it's a reasonable expectation to believe that they will go into Lambeau or go into Tampa in January and win a playoff game on the road. So I think the ultimate thing they need to look at is getting Trey Lance in as soon as possible and then building into next season, just like you said. Quick example, the last time Kyle had a rookie quarterback that was taken in the top 5 that was this talented, it was Robert Griffin III. And Washington had the second most efficient offense in the league. They had a top 5 in scoring, they're top 5 in yardage. If they have a season like that and they win a playoff game, that by all means is an extremely successful season, and they should feel very good about that. Because while they do want the immediate success, I understand people still have the taste of the Super Bowl appearance in their mouth, and they want that that immediate gratification. If they show some progress building forward with Lance as the guy, it's an extremely successful season in my book. What they can't have is this back and forth where they're going back and forth between Jimmy and Lance, like we saw Miami do with Fitzpatrick and last year. which ultimately stunted Tua's development. And Fitzpatrick is gone on another team now, which Jimmy likely will be, almost assuredly will be next year. So just ultimately the main thing they need to focus on, while they're going to say it's winning games, that should be goal 1A. 1B right behind it should be whatever they can to develop Trey Lance and make him feel comfortable going into year 2, and then obviously all the years following that.
Real quick before we go, Mose Beach says, "Do you think if Trey dink and dunks more rather than forcing the ball down the field would help him in this competition?" I mean, if he wants to have like a better stat line in a preseason game, then sure. But I think he's doing everything right now. I think the fact that he's throwing the ball down the field aggressively and not getting picked is good.